28 years later already seems to be avoiding the biggest mistake made by another failed zombie movie sequel. Starring Cillian Murphy, 2002's 28 Days Later was made on a shoestring budget of $8 million. However, what the film lacked in budget, it made up in creativity, performances, and subversion of genre tropes. Instead of treading the same path as most zombie movies of its time and featuring the typical slow zombies, 28 Days Later dared to speed things up a little. It made zombies scarier than ever by showing how they could move with terrifying agility, proving to be a visceral threat to the characters. The film was further elevated by the compelling performances of its cast and the gripping human story at its core. Unfortunately, its sequel, 28 Weeks Later, could not match its high standards, establishing that 28 Days Later caught lightning in a bottle, which may never be captured again. Fortunately, Alex Garland and Danny Boyle have not teamed up for another sequel, 28 Years Later, which is incredibly exciting because it already seems to be on the right track toward succeeding. 28 Years Later is avoiding the biggest problem that hurt Train to Busan's sequel. 28 Years Later has not been rushed like Train to Busan's sequel. Although the zombie subgenre is overly saturated with several run-of-the-mill tales of the undead, only a few movies like 28 Days Later and Train to Busan have been able to break through the monotony and bring something fresh to the table. Like 28 Days Later, Train to Busan's success also spawned a sequel, titled Peninsula, which premiered in 2020. Since the first Train to Busan's director, Yun Sang-ho, was at Peninsula's helm, audiences expected it to be as spectacular as Train to Busan. Unfortunately, the film received underwhelming reviews despite being developed by the same people who were involved with the original. Given how 28 Years Later is being developed by the dynamic duo, Danny Boyle and Alex Garland, who created 28 Days Later, it is hard not to be concerned if the sequel could meet the same fate as Yun Sang-ho's Peninsula. However, it is relieving to know that Danny Boyle and Alex Garland did not even consider making the film until they had a solid, compelling story to tell. Despite having the perfect opportunity to leverage 28 Days Later's success, the two did not return to write or direct 28 Weeks Later. Peninsula, on the other hand, was seemingly a rushed sequel that premiered only 4 years after Train to Busan. 28 Years Later's development timeline proves it has a solid reason to exist. 28 Years Later has been in development for 2 decades. Since 28 Days Later premiered in 2002, it has been over 2 decades since Alex Garland and Danny Boyle joined forces for the zombie movie. In all these years, the creative powerhouses have written and directed myriad films of diverse genres, allowing them to refine their direction and storytelling skills. After 28 Weeks Later's inability to recreate 28 Days Later's success, Boyle and Garland were even apprehensive about continuing the franchise. However, the fact that they are still going ahead with it proves that they have some fascinating ideas in mind.